Welcome to this Advent devotional series. This is day 5 of our series. I am Reverend Lester Spees, and I have the privilege of serving as pastor at Memorial Lutheran Church in Glendale, Wisconsin. During this Advent season, I will be reflecting on some tough questions that come from Scripture and on some sacred spaces that have helped me to respond to those tough questions. Thank you for joining me in this journey. This devotion is for Thursday, December 1st, 2022. And our tough questions for today come from Romans chapter 8, verses 31 and 35. What then are we to say about these things? If God is for us, who is against us? Who will separate us from the love of Christ? In 4th grade, our teacher, Mrs. Washington, asked the class what we planned to do when we grew up. Some of my classmates planned to be farmers, firefighters, teachers, police officers, workers in their family business, laborers at the local Dr. Pepper bottling company, and many other things that I can't remember almost 50 years later. I do remember that when it was my turn to declare my career goal, I announced that I wanted to be a pastor. Mrs. Washington stopped and announced in front of the class that I might need to reconsider my career goals. Pastors had to go to college in order to complete their training, and I wasn't smart enough to get into college. I don't remember if this was the first time I cried at school or not, but I know that it became one of the many. School was an important place for me, and I am grateful for the education that I received in that small school district. My graduating class had 78 students, and that was fairly average for that community of about 2,500 people in total population. But school was not a safe space or a comfortable place. In addition to the less than encouraging words from teachers and staff like Mrs. Washington, I also had to contend with a lot of bullying from my classmates. I was significantly shorter than the average boy in my class. I wore a crew cut for most of my early years, which wasn't the current style for junior high school youth in the 1970s. And I was constantly teased after each haircut. I weighed less than 100 pounds when I graduated. Most days included some form of abuse from kids and adults alike. I felt sick many days, but rarely missed a day of school in 12 years. I avoided private spaces like restrooms, mostly out of fear of what someone might say or do to me in those spaces. I trained my body to go to the restroom before I left the house each morning, to get on the bus, and then to wait until I got home in the afternoon to go to the restroom again. I also avoided public spaces like the cafeteria so as to dodge the teasing and laughter. I always brought my lunch or grabbed something quickly from the school snack bar and ate it either with my friend Gordon, who was a year older, on one of the benches outside of the school auditorium, or on my own in those times when Gordon was not there. What I did actively do at school for the 8 years following 4th grade was to listen in class and study hard in hopes of proving Mrs. Washington wrong, that I could be smart enough to go on to college and then to seminary. Even in the midst of those uncomfortable times, there were rays of light, examples of Christianity at work, even in the public school. I had 2 angels who provided a safe and supportive place when the rest of the world felt too scary. Miss Brown and Senora Matula. Miss Brown was my physical science teacher in ninth grade. Senora Matula taught me English during my junior year and Spanish in my junior and senior years. Miss Brown allowed me to come into her classroom at the beginning of the day before classes started to sit and get homework done or study for an upcoming test. I could escape the heat on warm days and the cold during those rare cooler days in South Texas. But mostly, I could escape the taunting and torture of my classmates for a few minutes in the safety of her classroom. Miss Brown was an active member of her Black Baptist church, and she was a strong supporter of my call to serve as a pastor. Senora Matula likewise provided a space when Miss Brown was not available or when the convenience of her room just made more sense. Senora Matula was a member of the local Roman Catholic Church and likewise was a strong supporter of my call to serve as a pastor. Her classroom was also a place of safety and escape. I graduated valedictorian from Hallettsville High School, summa cum laude from Texas Lutheran College, and with honors in New Testament studies and pastoral theology from the Lutheran Theological Seminary in Gettysburg. It turns out Mrs. Washington was wrong. I was smart enough. I just needed a couple of teachers to believe in me and provide a space where I could learn and grow in safety, in security, and surrounded by the love of Christ. 8 years after graduating from Hallettsville High School and delivering the valedictorian address at my graduation ceremony, Miss Brown and Senora Matula came to my rescue once again. They each agreed to read one of the scripture lessons at my ordination service on June 24th, 1990. I could not have been more honored. Once again, I felt safe and supported as I was surrounded by these two angels. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? As long as there are people like Miss Brown and Senora Matula, I know the answer is no one.